What is up, everyone? We are back for the first Miami Dolphins postgame show of the 2022-2023 season. My name is Tyler DeSena, and I am joined by Tim. Say hi, Tim.
What's up, guys?
All right. So, 20-7 win, week 1-0, escapes the weirdest week in football every year, week 1 with the W. Any specific takeaways you have from 20-7?
It's got to start with the man of the hour, Cater Caho on defense, undrafted out of Texas A&M Commonwealth. Or is it Commonwealth?
I think it's Commerce.
Yeah. UDFA in his first game, filling in for a guy like Byron Jones. We saw Nick Needham. He got beat, I think, about 2 times, especially the big one down the left sideline in the fourth quarter. But Cater Caho, you talk about the fumble. He had another big deflection there on the fourth down throw from Mac Jones. For a rookie to be thrusted in like that in his first game and make the plays that he did, truthfully, the game could have been a lot closer without, those 2 big plays.
Yeah, definitely. The Dolphins were looking for their fourth corner. We knew this going into the season, and especially losing Trill Williams and Noah Benogany not having the offseason that anyone has really hoped for. He was inactive today. You knew that they needed their fourth corner. They had the 3 in Xavier Howard, Byron Jones, who will be out for the first 4 weeks, and Nick Needham. And Cater Caho stepped into that fourth cornerback role and from the slot made play after play today. And I think that that's the guy that when you look at this game, you got to be like, he is probably the MVP of this game.
It's got to be him or Melvin Ingram. Melvin Ingram got the fancy stats, but
Melvin Ingram did get the stats, but late in the game when we needed stops, the fumble, the fourth down stop, he was all over the place. Dude's flying to the football. And I think that that's, absolutely huge because you could argue aside from extra offensive linemen, that was probably our biggest need. And as far as the offense, Tua had a little under 300 yards, probably his biggest passing performance, I believe, in a win against these Patriots. He is now 4-0 against Bill Belichick. And the game wasn't fantastic for Tua, but he got it done. Any thoughts on that specifically?
It definitely wasn't a terrific game at all on his part. Left a lot of meat on the bone, definitely, which was something we talked about a lot last year. A couple of really questionable decisions, right? Late in the game, rolling out to the left, probably could have gotten the 3 yards, either gone out of bounds or slid, whichever one was more accessible at the time. And he put the ball in the air and underthrew it, throwing across his body. Never want to do that. Fourth quarter, trying to put the game on ice. A couple more questionable throws. I know the first one looked really bad at first, but I guess it got tipped by Judon, that first throw of the game on the high snap.
Yeah, I think it got tipped. And also, I'm not going to get mad at him for a high snap ball not coming out great, especially considering the only place it really went was the dirt. That one I'll give him a pass on. As far as the rest of the game, you get the win, which is the biggest part, but there are some things that definitely do scare you a bit with Tua. You can see that even though you look at him and you see the stat line and you're like, oh, he threw for 1 touchdown, you got to win. He was really safe with the football. That's what you would think by the stat sheet. But this is somebody who it scares you because of the fact that he's not taking a bunch of shots downfield, but is somehow also not being safe with the football, which worries you for the future. The pass to Tyreek, where Tyreek somehow hauled it in with one hand and is showing shades of Randy Moss now. And then and that play could have easily been intercepted. And then the following play, Tyreek's wide open and he just completely misses them. There are some things with Tua that definitely are concerning. All he had to do today was not blow it, and he didn't blow it. So I guess that's the plus, but you definitely need to see improvement, especially the fact that your next 3 games come against 3 really good teams in those: Bills, Ravens, and Bengals.
You were talking about turnover-worthy plays. He might have had 7 today.
Yeah, exactly. None of them actually resulted in anything that was catastrophic, but they easily could have. As for, the guys on the end of those passes, there were definitely some interesting observations. Jalen Waddle was quiet early, and then at the last play of that first half had that crazy catch and run for the touchdown on 4th and 9. I love the play call on 4th and 9. I have to say, it's 18 seconds left in the half. You're close to midfield, I believe, in Patriot territory. There's no point in punting the ball, and you definitely can't kick the field goal. So that's something interesting. But as for, I guess, the receivers and who caught passes, Tyreek Hill was obviously the leader in receiving yards and catches. Didn't have any touchdowns. Waddle was the only one who caught a touchdown. But what do you think of the usage of Waddle and Hill and, other receivers? Mike Gesicki didn't get much work today.
I think we were deceived a little bit. I mean, I remember when the McDaniel hire first came through, it's typical Shanahan guy, probably going to be a really heavy run percentage on first down, really heavy run percentage for the game in general. A little conservative on fourth down. If you go look at it, the Niners under Shanahan have been, about middle of the pack, maybe even bottom half of the league in terms of going forward on fourth down. But here we sit, multiple fourth down attempts today, including 4th and 7 there at the end of the half, which I thought was awesome and great play call too. I've been waiting for Waddle to break one like that for a touchdown since he was drafted, and he finally did. But it was
100%.
different than what I thought it was going to be because they ended up throwing the ball 32 times.
Something like, yeah, I think it was 32, 33 times, which is
in a game where they were up from the middle of the first on.
Yeah, and it was start to finish and really early down passing, which is something I didn't expect. A lot more. I mean, I understand that Tua is not necessarily the under center quarterback, but a lot more gun than I was expecting. A lot of, you would expect a lot of under center Alec Ingold than, Mostert or Edmonds behind him. And there was definitely a fair share of that, but a lot of gun looks for Tua, which I thought was shocking. Early passes, like you said. I mean, definitely an interesting thing. I mean, Mike Gesicki, I think, was barely present at all. What did he have? 1 catch? We knew that he was not necessarily going to have a huge role in this offense, and I think that was confirmed today. I think we saw a couple Tanner Connor snaps. I think he had a false start but on one of them, but the fact that he's already getting playing time, that might be the guy that they look to. There was not much tight end play for Miami really at all today. I think Durham Smythe had a catch or two. So
I was confused by the Tanner Connor thing because if I remember correctly, he was on the inactive list, was he not?
I don't remember. I mean, I'm assuming no, considering he played.
Yeah, that's why the first time I saw him penalized, I was like, "There's no way that's Tanner Connor." Let's see if I can find it right here on the fly.
Well, yeah. While you're looking for that, I mean, it's going to be interesting. This is obviously not even close to the full iteration of this offense. We do not know what they're going to look like in a close game setting at all. This game was essentially over by halftime, and Miami, all they had to do was just, play good defense and not turn the ball over. So, I mean, and they were still passing. So maybe this is closer than we realized. But I still think that, if we haven't seen what Miami looks like when they're down, that could have very easily happened early. But, Javon Holland and Xavier Howard being one of the best defensive back duos in football, making plays early, you didn't have to deal with that. So, I mean, not a lot to take away, honestly. Week 1, always weird. That's probably the number one thing to take away. But I mean, how about this defense, man? This defense they played phenomenal football today. A couple weird decisions. Jalen Phillips was out in coverage on the touchdown.
I don't get the fascination with that, man. Last coaching staff, this coaching staff, doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, Josh.
I get he's a good athlete. I get it, but let's.
And I saw Melvin Ingram dropping a coverage on a snap too. Very odd. That's the weird thing. I think that's the number one thing that probably needs to get cleaned up. I don't know if it was a miscommunication. I think that they genuinely dropped him in a coverage. Just have the guy rush the passer. I know he wasn't super effective today, but you had guys like Agba, guys like Ingram, guys like Sealer who were getting after the quarterback today and, wreaking havoc against the run. Put Phillips in there and he will eventually make plays. But, I mean, any main observation of the defense aside from Kader Kohu, who we talked about, was just absolutely balling.
The bringing those safeties as pass rushers is still, Boyer's still cooking with that. I mean, we saw Brandon Jones get home and make a big play. But Javon Holland also got home, too, on the offsetting penalties, chop block / roughing the passer. I mean, he's got to make sure he's not roughing the passer there. Actually, he wasn't the one that got called. It was the person who got blocked into Mac Jones's legs.
Yeah, I think it was him or it might have been Brandon Jones, too, who was in the backfield there. But, I mean, yeah, the cover zero type. We didn't see much of like the amoeba cover zero thing today with a bunch of guys standing up, not necessarily knowing who's coming. I don't think it was like a super high percentage of that today, but there definitely were defensive back blitzes. I think on the 4th down where Kader Kohu batted the ball down or made a play on the ball, I think that Xavier Howard came in on a blitz today, which was pretty nuts. I mean,
that was interesting.
They're definitely trying things. I don't know how much of that we're going to see in the future, considering that's probably your best defensive player and maybe the best player on this team. So I don't know how much in the future you're going to see Xavier Howard getting after the quarterback. But, I mean, those blitzes still remain. We just have to see how effective they are against a quarterback who who has a better supporting cast than Mac Jones. And, when Byron Jones is probably healthy, I'm expecting to see more of those when Nick Needham is not forced outside. As for trying to think of, there were some other major plays that happened. How about special teams? Special teams looked, they didn't seem to miss a beat today. Morstead had some boots. And I mean, I think the kick returning situation is certainly interesting. Javon Holland back there on kicks. I'm not sure how I feel about it. Raheem Mostert back there as well. I mean, it's crazy that this is a team that you look at and they have this many different speed guys and you don't want to put any of them back there to return kicks. But Jason Sanders was money today. Whole team played solid. I think the offense was something that we obviously said needed to improve on. Any other major player let down or surprise to you today? Maybe snaps or something.
We know what the conversation is going to be tonight and for the next 6 days. There wasn't a shot play. And I'm sure they were called, and they weren't thrown or executed today. It's going to come eventually. It kind of felt like the Patriots were doing everything possible to take that away. I mean, we'll know more when the All-22 comes out, but it kind of felt like, at least from the TV angle, they sat in too high a lot today, and they weren't going to let Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle get behind them, and they didn't. Right? Jalen Waddle was able to squeeze through 2 of them, but they never got behind them. I think the shot play is going to come eventually. This is still a Bill Belichick-led defense, and the Dolphins haven't been able to push the ball down the field against New England in the last 3 years, the whole Flores era, and including this game today.
100%.
We remember last year's game. There was a 37-yarder to Waddle, which may have been a touchdown with a better throw. And I think the only other play that went more than like 20 air yards in that game last year was the 50-50 ball to Devontae Parker against J.C. Jackson.
Yeah, this is not a team that, no matter the defensive backs, is letting up big plays in the back end. So, I mean, the entire point of this team is to prevent the deep ball, and we did not see much shot plays. It looked like there were a couple of times where they were trying to load up something deep. It looked like Tua was looking deep downfield, and then they just, either didn't pull the trigger or it was covered. I remember one specific play where it looked like if Tua, I don't know, we obviously couldn't see the receivers, but it looked like he was getting ready to throw something and then got a little paranoid about the pressure, stuttered up in the pocket a little bit, and either had to throw it away or was sacked. So, I mean, we don't obviously.
I would definitely say this is not the, pocket movement, pocket awareness quarterback that we've grown accustomed to. It's a big talking point, but it just seems like, again, against New England, he just looks like a different player. Now, we've been very fortunate that the defense has come to play in a lot of these games. I think they allowed 16 points against New England in week 1 last year, and then obviously got the defensive touchdown in week 18. But I think offense is going to come eventually. A big part of that is you got to get your 5 guys up front on the field at the same time. I think Austin Jackson went down midway through the second quarter, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, you lost Jackson, and then right after that, you lost who was Greg Little went out early after that, who was, playing pretty well. And then Jones was, I think, got banged up a little bit, but he was fine. And then Armstead went out, and I think Armstead came up limping on one of those last plays too. I mean, I think that's something we got to check on. Obviously, if he's hurt, that whole offensive line probably falls apart. I think luckily it seems like there is some tackle depth. Greg Little did not look that bad in his few snaps today. Austin Jackson, not horrible, but I know that he gave up a couple free rushers in the pocket. But, I mean, that line needs to be fully together in order for this team to go where they want to go, especially running the ball, which we saw that was not, to the level that we expected it to be.
Not a whole lot of movement in the run game, but also the only problem I have today with, play call or anything like that, little too much pitches and tosses for my liking today. I think I counted at least 6.
100% agree. You can't. I think the point of this run game is that it's not meant to necessarily, it's the zone scheme. You're not going to necessarily be pounding the ball the entire game. Like you're not trying to move guys off the spot. You're trying to, open holes as opposed to just maul guys. But I think that you're trying to, hit those home runs, but you can't be pitching the ball this many times, especially with guys this new in the scheme, and they're giving up, big tackles in the backfield. I'd rather, you run like a simple outside zone run and you get a ceiling of maybe losing a yard a floor of losing a yard or getting back to the line of scrimmage, and then a ceiling of 3 or 4 yards, then have to run a pitch play where you're, potentially losing 6 or gaining 6. So it's just getting to that. We need to probably see more of like a, natural run thing as opposed to that. And also I think using more of the short passes and extension of the run. Chase Edmonds looked really solid today, as a receiver. And he didn't look bad as a runner either. He just didn't really get the opportunity with the way that the offensive line played. So maybe using him more, in the screen game. How many screens did we see today? Didn't look like much.
Couple to Tyreek Hill, definitely.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think there were many running back screens.
Are we? What are we calling that Edmonds play where they threw it across the field?
When was this?
Or no, Mostert, where they threw it across the field to Mostert. Are we calling that a screen?
That might have been that actually probably was a screen. So that one counts, and he made a play out of that. So I think I think the misdirection is something that just needs to be implemented more. I don't think we saw a whole lot of counter. I don't know. A lot of the Mike McDaniel or San Francisco really expansive run plays that are super intricate. I don't think a lot of those were called yet. I don't know if he's gotten in the bag yet with those, but I think that's something we're probably going to expect more of. I know there was one of them on that Alec Ingold 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2 that he picked up. I mean, they had a bunch of different motion.
How about taking a shot play to Alex Ingold?
I mean, they used him early. I think he had a couple of targets in the first quarter, and I was like, okay, he's getting the ball. And they want to use him like Kyle Juszczyk, I guess. I mean, I saw him lining up in a little bit of H-back tight end role, in the fullback behind center, as the I formation fullback. They're going to move him around. I think that's a big thing, and especially that play where they ran him up the middle, where they had I forget who it was coming in motion. That was pretty crazy as well. I think that they're going to utilize him actually as a weapon in his offense just because of how good he is as a blocker and how teams are probably going to forget about him. So, I mean, next week, moving on to Buffalo's week 2, correct?
I always get Buffalo and Baltimore confused every time I think about the schedule. It's Baltimore.
It's Baltimore next week. Okay, yeah.
And
I don't know if
they didn't look terrific today.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like I've said before, you definitely cannot judge teams based on week 1. This is not close to the final iteration of their team. I know we say that about preseason, and it sounds, like we're beating a dead horse about week 1, but really none of these teams are final. And, Baltimore, they turned it on in the second half a little bit. That Rashad Bateman bomb, the Lamar Jackson big run, but this isn't a team that is necessarily, playing 100% yet. No J.K. Dobbins. The run game was non-existent, and Miami really did a good job stopping the run today. So if, might be in for a repeat of last time if you can get in against the run and hopefully make some plays.
I think you definitely have to bring extra defenders as rushers next week, because much as I love the Duke Riley and guys like that, I think had the Patriots had a mobile quarterback today, it maybe would have been a little bit different. Our linebackers kind of got abused today a little bit. A lot of targets to Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith. Jonnu Smith caught 3 screens, I think. Every time he caught the ball, he broke a tackle or 2.
Yeah, both of them were not playing bad. I think that, you definitely, if you're going to be playing the Ravens next week, obviously we're going to address this in a preview pod or article, but I think a big thing that you have to do is what you did last time, which was just abuse the cover 0 looks, the safety blitz looks, and, mix up what Lamar Jackson is seeing in the pocket. Because if you send 4, people can make the jokes all they want about Lamar Jackson not being able to throw, but he will pick you apart if you sit back, because if you give him time to read defenses or potentially, run or make plays outside the pocket, he will tear you apart. So you have to be able to contain him while at the same time bringing heat.
Dare those receivers to win early in the route.
Yeah, that is a receiving core that you can win against. You put, X on Bateman, and who else is going to make plays? I know Duvernay, I think, had 2 touchdowns today, but at the same time, that is not a guy who's been consistently winning. It's him, it's Bateman, and it's Andrews are the 2 guys. You just gotta lock them up and pray no one else beats you, and just dare them to win. And yeah, exactly like you said, make them win early. So I think those are the main keys if you're going to beat the Ravens. But 1-0, big win. I think that the one thing I wanted to address was probably the run defense with today. That was the one thing that I think we kind of glossed over. Played pretty well, like
especially
we
after the
said.
first quarter.
Yeah,
After the first quarter, they completely shut them down.
Yeah, that first drive was crazy. That first drive, we were giving up some big runs, but then really after that and beyond, they just were not getting beat today. When you have guys like Sealer, Wilkins, John Jenkins, I believe, had a big play at some point. I think
he did. Yeah.
I think I saw him get a big stop. Melvin Ingram, like we said, he is stout against the run. I was completely wrong about. I was excited when he got here, but when I saw him in training camp, I thought he looked a little, sluggish and slow. But I think a lot of that was his rehab because he did have an injury. But he made plays today, so that's definitely a guy that we got to keep looking out for. Any other performers you saw specifically?
I mean, shout out to Tyreek Hill for doing all the dirty work today. I know everyone talks about him and his speed and getting downfield, but like we said, they weren't going to let that happen today. And I mean, he didn't look like Tyreek Hill today. He looked kind of like a Devontae Adams, DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, that one-handed, steal it away from the defender, that was awesome. You forget this guy's like 5'9".
Yeah, I think that the number one thing you think of with Tyreek Hill is like he's going to use his speed and burn you over the top. But the thing is that you really can't. He might not be the best receiver in the NFL if you don't believe he is. If you think a guy like Devontae Adams is better, I completely understand. I have Devontae Adams as the best receiver in the NFL in my book, but Tyreek Hill is probably the most versatile in the ways that you can win with him because he can beat you over the top, and if that's not working, he can take those little 5-yard passes. There was one today where he caught it about 3 yards past the line of scrimmage, then ran backwards 3 or 4 yards to break the angle of whatever New England player was going after him, and then still picked up like 5 or 6 extra. So there is no angle that you can tackle Tyreek Hill at, and especially if they get him going more, in that intermediate and deep game. He had a really good first start, and hopefully it keeps going. So
did you see the cushion they were giving him today? I think it was his second catch of the game, third down conversion. I think it went for like 18, 22 yards, something like that. I mean, the cushion he was being given by New England. I mean, he was able to completely stop, grab the ball, turn around, become a ball carrier, and pick up a couple more. He did end up fumbling the ball out of bounds. But the cushion they gave him on that play and just every play in general, it just opens up so much.
Yeah, the underneath game is where you've got to win, especially with a quarterback like Tua who excels in that short passing game primarily and not, isn't going to air you out. But if you have somebody like Tyreek Hill and defenses are going to continue to respect that, even if your quarterback's not necessarily throwing deep, the amount it opens up for you to be efficient, to dink and dunk teams a little bit to get down the field is definitely huge. I see that Hassam's here. What's going on, Hassam?
Hey, what's up, man?
What's up, Tyler? What's up, Tim? How you guys doing today?
1-0. That's the bottom line.
1-0, but sound the alarms, everybody, because we all want to get rid of Tua, right?
I think we got time to talk about that, but I mean, we obviously addressed it. That performance was not what we need to see in the future, especially when you're playing a string of Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, and Joe Burrow over the next 3 weeks, even though Joe Burrow struggled today. We all know that week 1 is the weirdest week in pretty much sports because no team is at their, max capacity. But that is something that definitely needs to be worked on. It looked like a lot of stuff we saw last year.
I think we're going to get like a lot of ties today. But look, man, it's week 1. Everybody's going to look like crap. Like even the Dolphins offense, in my opinion, look like crap. There was barely any run game. No running back ran for 25 yards or over, and Mike McDaniel was hailed as the running back guru. The offensive line didn't look good at all. Everybody was getting injured. Tua, he had some, a lot of bad mistakes. He had a lot of good throws as well. We can talk about Tua just a little bit later. I'll be diving into all 22 soon. But, I mean, it was a classic Jimmy G game from Tua Tagovailoa. And I know a lot of Dolphins fans wanted to grab Jimmy G, at their earliest convenience. I mean, if this is Tua's floor on the offense, imagine what his ceiling could be. And if his floor is Jimmy G, you have to take a look at his upside. This is his first real NFL game in this offense. Who's to say he won't learn? I mean, he's going to learn. I think just the big thing with me with Tua is just about fading into the pressure and evading that pressure. I mean, he looked uncomfortable on a lot of those throws, especially those 10 throws that he missed. He was 22 for 32, 270 yards and a touchdown. But, McDaniel made him roll to the right a lot. It's an area of focus he needs to work on. And why not do it in week 1 instead of, whenever the Dolphins play the Bills in Buffalo and Von Miller is right in his face and smacks the hell out of him. I'd rather have it happen in week 1 against Matthew Judon than in Buffalo in a potential playoff game, because in a potential make the playoffs game in Buffalo. And, he just can't do it. Like, he needs to learn now. He needs to, go in the film room and learn from it. I mean, I saw a lot of wide receivers running open. It was just the pressure that he was facing up the middle a lot. And Tyler, I know you and I talked about it, but a lot of quarterbacks struggle up against pressure under the center, especially Tua. He just fades his throws into it a lot.
Yeah, and I think that's the number one thing is that a lot of guys fade on throws in the NFL, especially when they see that, A or B gap pressure, especially when it's coming straight at their knees. But the problem is, Tua is a guy who he can't compromise any of that arm strength by fading into these throws, because of the fact that he is already somebody that if you want to see him make those 15, 20-yard strikes over the middle of the field, he has to be fully stepping into it. So I think that, he has to learn to either not do it or find ways to evade pressure or, make off-platform throws. And we know that the off-platform throws are something he's going to struggle with. So simply, he just can't fade. And he looked, the word I said was paranoid today. I think there were times, and there was good reason for it. He was getting, there was a lot of pressure coming after him, but there were times where he was sitting in there and it looked like he was going to make a throw and he was like cocking back and then he would pump fake or do something. And he looked a little, it's week 1. It's the first time he's really taken hits, from like live NFL players and against Belichick.
I think it was week 1 for Teron Armstead, for Tyreek Hill, for Jalen Waddle. For a lot of guys. I mean, was it a perfect game? No, but a lot of Dolphins fans, from what I'm hearing, what I'm seeing, and what I'm reading, they wanted a perfect game. They wanted a 38-7 blowout. Very rarely do you see 38-7 blowouts in division games, unless you're the Buffalo Bills, who might honestly make their march to the Super Bowl this year with an unstoppable offense, a great quarterback, potential MVP quarterback in Josh Allen, and a fantastic defense, which is replenished by Von Miller. Were there mistakes? Yes. Are there concerns? Yes. The Miami Dolphins are 1-0. On to week 2, on to Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. There's improvements that can be made. If we want to touch on the Patriots, I believe Tim said that Mac Jones is actually getting x-rays. Do we know what that's for?
Yes, he is.
Do we know what that's for?
What body part?
He is right now. I'm not so sure. I'm trying to work the phones, but nothing has come up yet.
I could also see if maybe, anything has been released anywhere.
No,
but yeah,
he came out of the X-ray room. He walked to the Patriots locker room. I don't think, knowing New England, knowing Bill Belichick, knowing
they're definitely not going to let it out.
They're not going to say anything at all. Yeah. They're definitely not going to say anything at all. But can we talk about the 2 tandem safeties, Brandon Jones and Javon Holland? I mean, those guys may be the best young safety tandem in the NFL.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we were talking about them earlier. We were talking about Cater earlier. This defensive back room looks feisty. This is the number one thing is that this team has to be aggressive in order to win games, because they're not going to. This is not a team that simply just sits back in coverage, lets their 4 pass rushers get after you, and then they have great pass rushers, but they need to be able to blitz and be aggressive and play, press man. And that is what Javon Holland and Brandon Jones allow you to do. Because, you saw it on the first drive. Xavier Howard made a great play playing, man coverage up on Devontae Parker, tipped it over, and guess who's right behind him? Javon Holland to make a play.
Can we just shout out Cater Kohu, the undrafted free agent defensive back pickup from Texas A&M Commerce? The fact that he gets to play over Noah Igbenogany absolutely boggles my mind, because Igbenogany, he's a first-round draft pick in 2020, makes probably 2 critical plays of the games for the Dolphins defense. And kudos to the Dolphins scouting department and Pat Surtain and and Sam Madison for coaching up this kid. A lot of batted passes. With this one batted pass on the fourth down up against Hunter Henry, who is a surefire catcher, and really really good tackles towards the end of the game.
And the forced fumble too. I mean, he was flying across the field there. I mean, that dude
he was
played
flying.
good. And
He was definitely
he's
flying,
a smaller
and
guy, and making that play.
And maybe the defense is the same. We'll have to see if that continues up against the Baltimore Ravens week 2. Hopefully it does. Hopefully they put more duress on Lamar Jackson. Love the pickup of Melvin Ingram. There was a lot of pass rush going, but you got to think about the Patriots offense. They were, from reports from practice and training camp and preseason, they were awful. And, the only touchdown they got was off of a DPI or a holding call on Xavier Howard, which led to a touchdown. For all we know, Miami could have won the game 27-0.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and they were driving down the field late too. Like they had the ball in like a position to score. If the game is closer and they're in that same position, they probably are trying to score in that scenario. So, I mean, there were a lot of opportunities left on the field for both teams, and Miami's defense certainly played really, really well outside of that one gaffe.
So Tim, can I ask you a quick question?
What's good?
So Tua, he finished 23 for 33, 270 yards and a touchdown, 104.4 quarterback rating, no turnovers, but he left a lot on the field. Would you take that in game 1 of a new offense?
Absolutely. And I think it's less about.
Are we talking objectively here? Not as a Dolphins fan, just
always.
Watching it objectively.
What looked more to me like, less about him being uncomfortable in the offense. I do think he really, really likes this offense, and I think they did a great job maximizing a lot of his strengths. To me, this is just typically how he looks against New England. I love the stat that he's 4-0 against Belichick. Don't get me wrong. It's hilarious. I love it. But he honestly hasn't looked terrific in those games. Honestly, I still don't even think this is his best game against New England. I would always say that his first game is, because there was no Devontae Parker. There was no Mike Gesicki. This was 2020 in December against Cam Newton. No Jakeem Grant, and the Patriots still sat in too high all game and took away the deep ball. And he made several plays with his legs, including a rushing touchdown, there in the second half. But I do think that when he plays New England, it just looks different. He just looks like a different player. And that happens to a lot of guys. Don't get me wrong. I've seen Patrick Mahomes look like crap against New England for like 3 quarters. I think it's going to get better. Now, it's not going to get better right away because Baltimore might look better because they're a little beat up right now. And I love Baltimore's roster, but it feels kind of thin, especially at receiver. So I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities for, even if the Dolphins offense struggles, for them to maybe build, a 9, 10, 11-point lead at some point in that game, because I love Lamar Jackson. And now I believe they're without Ronnie Stanley, too. He at least missed this game. Do we know if he's going to be out long term?
I don't think we're sure yet.
Don't know about it, but we can always ask Ravens ATB right here on the Around the Block network as well. But Tyler, let me ask you this. Honestly, it was a breath of fresh air just looking at some of the plays Mike McDaniel was calling, especially on that 4th and 8 call. I mean, gutsy call. If it was Joe Philbin, he would have punted it.
If it was any of the last multiple head coaches, they would have punted it. And I think that's
exactly. I'm going through the roster right now. Joe Philbin would have punted it. Adam Gase would have called a bubble screen. Brian Flores would have brought out Jacoby Brissett for a quarterback sneak.
Brian Flores may have punted on 3rd down.
Mike McDaniel, he said, hold my beer, dropped his nuts, and said, cowabunga, dude, we're going for it.
Yeah, and they called up a great play. You got to get your players. You got to get your best players one-on-one. Whether you're in a scheme like this, it's not necessarily player dependent and is like relied on, getting players open with space. You still have to one-on-one win and get guys open, and that's what he did. He drew up the play. Waddle wins over the middle. Tua finds him, and he, does Jalen Waddle things and destroys angles. That's what he did in college, and that's what we didn't see enough of last year. We've seen more Jalen Waddle breaking plays open in one game than we saw pretty much all of last year, except for maybe one play against the Carolina Panthers.
This is his longest touchdown as a pro, right? And I think his second longest touchdown as a pro is 11 yards. This
is like one of his only touchdowns where he had to run into the end zone at all. Last year, almost all of his touchdowns were caught in the end zone, except for like one of them where he, like a couple that were like jet sweeps. But I mean, it's kind of crazy that Jalen Waddle, it took him pretty much over a year to get a catch and run into the end zone. this is like obvious stuff, and it's great that we're seeing it. And also, like I said, I mean, the variety in the run game, the jet sweeps that were working, the fact that we're seeing those plays and they're not getting blown up for 10-yard losses is huge because they're being blocked correctly. The Alec Ingold, like I said, like they were running some like sweeps around, and Alec Ingold took a fullback dive. Like the misdirection, it's not perfect yet. We saw that one weird play where Tyreek kept running back and forth to try to like mess up whoever was going out on him, and it looked like the snap should have gone off sooner or something because he was just sitting running back and forth, and it obviously got blown up by Kyle Duggar. But the amount of motion, the amount of different play calls that we're seeing, and the fact that, you know, when we need 2 yards, we're not going to Myles Gaskin and the Wildcat is certainly a breath of fresh air.
The fact that there wasn't a single Wildcat snap, honestly, the Dolphins could have lost by 75, but if they ran 0 Wildcat snaps,
that's a win.
I never want to see the Wildcat again.
And look, you know, I think Dolphins fans are rightfully, you know, angry. You know, there was a lot of hype this offseason, especially about Tua and his offense. You know, they wanted a blowout game. They wanted Tua to throw like a bomb to Tyreek Hill for a 75-yard touchdown. Can't always happen like that in the NFL, especially, you know, in a divisional game. It wasn't necessarily perfect, but it got the job done. But I think Tua and the offense, and Mike McDaniel even said it, you know, this is a defensive first team until otherwise. And Teron Armstead, Tua Tagovailoa, and even the running backs and wide receivers says, you know, offensively, you know, there's still some work to do. Teron Armstead just said it in the locker, you know, it looked like, you know, he got pulled out of the game for a couple of snaps, but the health of the offensive line is a real concern for me. And, you know, especially this running game. It's only week one.
Definitely. And Teron Armstead got pulled twice. If you looked at the end of the game, he got up hobbling too, which I was more concerned about that than earlier in the game because, you know, he obviously came back and he says he'll be fine for next week. But whenever your top offensive lineman, who you spent almost $20 million a year to bring to Miami, is getting hurt twice in one game, especially considering he's never played a full season, you're going to be concerned. Everything that we were worried about with the offensive line showed flashes of what could be wrong. Teron Armstead got pulled out of the game 2 times. The first passing snap of the game was a high snap from Connor Williams, who besides that, we didn't see that many bad snaps from it. But I mean, that was a big concern, and we saw it early.
And the pass from Tua, it was tipped by Matthew Judon, and, you know, he had Tyreek naked, and he could have taken it all the way. You know, that was a little bit disappointing, and I think that changed the momentum of the game just a little bit early on. You know, he was looking for, you know, the deep ball on the intermediate side of the field, the right side of the field, which is his blind side. And, you know, I think if it wasn't tipped, he could have had that throw, and Tyree could have taken it for a big game.
Exactly. I think next week it's definitely not River Craycraft that gets dressed from the practice squad. It's an offensive lineman.
I feel like it has to be. I also feel like, I mean, obviously the weird thing that we saw pregame was Eric Ezukama not getting the inactive over under River Craycraft, who, you know, was active today. So it's definitely interesting to see if maybe that changes next week. The personnel was obviously, you know, we didn't see a lot of the other receivers besides the top 3 of Wilson, you know, and Waddle and Tyreek Hill.
So Mac Jones has a back injury.
Oh.
He did spend a lot of time on his back today.
Yeah. They were getting after him, which is great.
And he got lit up a few times too. Some of those hits were intense.
Vicious. Miami was getting after it. Big win, great defensive stuff. Hassam, I know that you have to go at some point. So it was great having you on. We'll see you next time.
Of course, thank you guys for having me.
Of course. And I mean, I think that's just about it. It seems that we covered everything. On to Baltimore next week. It's going to be exciting to see what Miami does against a team that, you know, also won their week 1 matchup and looked good towards the end of the game. I mean, I think that's just about it for us. Any last words from you, Tim, where they can find you, things like that?
Something I forgot about was obviously the Dolphins don't have their own first-round pick. Some odd stuff happened in the offseason. I don't even know what it was about. But they do have the San Francisco 49ers first-round pick. And when you do have other team's first-round pick, before the season, you go in and you go on your pretty little schedule and you go WL. And I think about 99.9% of people had week 1 labeled as a W for the San Francisco 49ers. And Justin Fields said not so fast. So San Francisco 0-1.
Yeah, as somebody who was extremely high on Trey Lance, I mean, and thought that he was going to have a huge year. I mean, obviously, you know, disappointing for the narratives for me, I guess. But at the same time, whenever your a team whose draft pick you own can get a loss, a win pretty much stolen from them in a monsoon, you're going to take it. So, I mean, if that's going to be the norm for San Francisco, it's definitely big considering Miami lost that first round pick. But
think you get a pass on the Trey Lance narratives today? No George Kittle.
No George
security
Kittle.
blanket for a young
He's throwing in a
quarterback.
hurricane. I mean,
the field was literally crap.
Yeah. So, but anytime you can definitely steal something like that, it's big. So, good for Miami.
Root for the rest of the West.
Yeah, exactly. On to Baltimore next week, and I think that's just about anything. Anything else you want to wrap up with?
Obviously, can find you at. Is that your Twitter handle?
Descent of Sports. That's me.
Mine is at Tim C. Rodriguez. Come talk to me about nonsense. I'll argue with you all day.
Yeah, everyone talk ball.
Just don't ask me about fantasy football. That's all everyone does. I don't know if this happens to you too, because you want to do this for a career as well. My phone just blows up every August and September.
I mean, mine. I wouldn't. I've been getting some, but I wouldn't say I'm getting an overwhelming amount of fantasy football people asking me questions for that.
I'm in one league, and I have been part of 5 drafts.
Why? How? Huh?
People just asked me to do it for them and help them out. I mean, my friend literally showed up at work and said, "Hey, can you do my draft?"
I mean, I help people with their draft, but definitely not along those lines where people are like going out of their way.
Oh yeah, he showed up at the office because we work at the same place, and he goes, "I need you to do it because I don't know anything, and they're all going to smoke me."
Well, I hope you got the. I hope
talk
you got the
about
win.
fantasy football.
I hope you got the win for him this week.
I made everyone I talked to pick Dameon Pierce, and Lovie Smith is killing me right now.
I mean, yeah, that didn't, but I mean, good overall. It seems like that'll do better at some point. But yeah, that's about all we have. Like you said, you can find him at Tim C. Rodriguez, me at Descent of Sports, and Dolphins ATB at Dolphins_ATB on Twitter. We will be back, I believe, next week for the same thing. Ravens game, big week for Miami. And that's just about all we have today. Fins up, everybody.
Fins up.